Hello and welcome back to the Ludiverse. This is probably going to sound a little different. We're doing the recording a little bit differently. I have my wife Danielle with me again.
Hello.
Our guest today actually runs her own podcast and has been for some time and actually knows what she's doing a little bit. So would you care to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Kathy K. I'm anonymous. My show is called Strictly Anonymous. I'm anonymous too. My name is kind of made up as well. But yeah, I'm Kathy K. I'm a host of the Strictly Anonymous podcast.
I came across your podcast actually because of Pandora.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to my podcast just to make sure that the audio quality came out all right. And for whatever reason, when my episode ended, it was just like, well, now you're going to listen to this one. And it started playing, and it was one where somebody had called in to talk about some affair that they were having that they didn't want anybody to know about.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is interesting, and I think other people should listen to this. So I got a hold of you, and here you are.
Yeah, I feel like we're doing similar things, right? And I think it's important to get, you're doing stories, people's, real stories about what people are really doing. And I think it's important for people to know about these things and to hear these stories, at least the stories on my show. And I think, like I said, you're doing kind of the same thing on your show.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So what actually got you into, like, what was the thought that was like, you know what, I'm going to do a show doing this and put it out there? What was that origin thought?
Well, it was a very backwards thing. I don't know. That's my life. I read magazine stories backwards. I've been known to do that. And everything that happens to me happens backwards. Like, I did not set out to have this show. It kind of happened, it actually happened by accident. I did want to have a podcast, right? I knew a lot of big successful comedians. They were like, oh, Kathy, you should do your own podcast because I love to talk and analyze things. And they're like, we'll teach you how to do it. This is the equipment that you get and everything. And I knew I wanted to do a call-in advice show because I really like to analyze things and pick things apart. And I find regular people just super fascinating, right? And so I wanted to put the word out. Like, I needed people to call my show, right? But I didn't have anybody. And I didn't want anyone. I mean, this is a true story. I didn't want anyone to know what I was doing because I thought it was going to suck. And I was like embarrassed. So I didn't want to put it out on any of my social media. So I'm like, where am I going to find people to call into my show? I need people with problems, right? So I went on to Craigslist. And I swear it was just because I was like frugal or cheap that I wound up in the personal section. Like, I went onto like a regular section on Craigslist to post an ad like, looking for people to call in about sex and love and relationships, call into my podcast. But all the places on Craigslist that I wanted to post it were, you had to pay for it. And like I said, I thought my show was going to suck. And I was like, I'm not putting anybody into this. I'm like, I'm just going to put it on the personals because that was literally the only free place to post. So I posted on like every section of the personals and it was like striking gold. I got like 15 emails back from guys, right? It was mostly guys with the craziest stories I had ever heard. And, for me, it was like super fascinating. And literally, I didn't even have my name of my show at this point yet. I was just going to tape a bunch of things. And so it all sort of started that way, right? And I decided to have my people become anonymous, and it became Strictly Anonymous, after I taped like a bunch of episodes and really figured out where it was going. So it was never my intention to have a show about sex and all these things. But I did want to help people. That's why I wanted to do my advice call-in show. And I do feel like that's what I do on my show. And I'm just happy that it all sort of happened, but it wasn't my intention.
Well, it's definitely a noble pursuit, wanting to help people. It's like, I remember back when I was younger, there were a long list of radio call-in shows, Love Lines and Dr. Ruth. And,
oh, God, yeah.
And with radio kind of phasing out, so too did the radio call-in. But yeah, I started scrolling through your episodes, and I've noticed that the most common ones were people having some kind of an affair.
No.
Yeah,
you didn't scroll enough.
Oh, really?
Oh, my God. That's like a small... I mean, I've been doing it for 7 years. I have almost 400 episodes, right? And I have probably about 50 taped that I can't get out. And I have to tell you that I would say the most common things that I have on now, like I've started to learn like which episodes do really well, right? So I'll probably air those more often now because I know what is more downloaded than something else, right? But I would say, when I first started out, the most common things that I would have on my show were, fetish stuff. And the fetishes that were really super popular in the beginning were like pantyhose, guys watching their partner with somebody else, and these were things that were all surprising to me from the beginning. But like these were like, those are the kinds of topics I have on a lot. Affairs, not so I mean, yeah, I have those too, but I wouldn't say that's the majority. I think it's more like fetish stuff, like pantyhose, cuckolding, men who hook up with men behind their wives' backs, shit like that. Is what I hear a lot of. Because, besides just talking about fetishes and having, hearing people's stories, it is a place where people could call in anonymously, right? I have that whole little thing going on. So I do get a lot of people that are leading a secret life, right? And they want to really get it off their back and talk about it. So a lot of times it is the guy who's, and maybe you're right, like all the guys that are like blowing guys behind their wife's back would fall into that category that you just said of like someone having an affair, right? Quote unquote.
Yeah, but it's just the level of comfort that you seem to be able to draw your guests into. It's like they call in to talk about, okay, I secretly like to wear my wife's lingerie when she's not home.
Yeah.
Okay. And I can understand, okay, yes, it's completely anonymous, so nobody's going to be able to be like, oh, hey, I know this person, unless they really recognize their voice.
No, I change everyone's voices. Every single voice is completely 100% change. You wouldn't believe what their voice sounds like regularly. Nothing like what, it's a slight change of pitch, but everyone's voice is changed, even the females.
Okay. Mm-hmm. But then it's like you take them from, yes, I like to do this, to pulling out, why do you like to do this?
Yeah.
Is there something like in your childhood that's triggered this? Or And it's just like, it's like therapy sessions.
Yeah.
With the amount of openness that you pull out of people. You have a very calming voice and a very professional manner while keeping it casual, which is really fun to listen to.
Thank you. That's awesome. I mean, you know what I think it is? Before I even started to do my show, like people would always be like, I can't believe I'm telling you this, But really, the reason why I wanted to do my show is because I'm genuinely interested in people. I find the things that these people are telling me to be fascinating, right? I'm just genuinely interested. I'm never listening or asking questions out of like, from a judgmental place. I'm asking questions from like strictly curiosity. I never go into a call with one question written down. I prefer to get on the phone with a stranger and not know anything about what they're going to tell me, because I know that I'm just a naturally curious person, and like whatever I think up, like I am going to come up with a lot of questions for them, right? Because I'm actually interested in what they have to say. And I think if people get that from you, they do open up. So people always have opened up for that reason, like I said, because I actually am interested in what they're saying.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. When I do my shows, my wife will be like, so who are we talking to? I'll be like, okay, well, I know this, I know name, and I know the basic topic.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the extent of my planning. It's just like, because I know what we're going to be talking about, I will formulate like some base questions.
Yeah.
Like, how'd you get into it, stuff like that. But if I find that if I try to structure it too much, then it becomes like a lecture or like a class in school. And school used to bore me to tears.
Right.
And if I bore my audience, they're not going to want to listen. And if I bore the guests, they're not going to want to talk.
Yeah, it makes it more like a conversation between two friends. I mean, a lot of times I'll get people making comments like, oh, you cut people off and stuff, or you talk too much. I just want to hear their story. It's like, fuck off. Like, it's a conversation. It's two people. Like, I'm doing this because I actually like having conversations with people, and I do want to ask questions, and I allow myself to do that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what it is. That's what people tune in for. If someone doesn't like that, then, find another show, right? Other shows are structured differently, but that's the way I structure my show. You're saying that's the way you do for yours too. So the people that like that kind of vibe will find you, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like we've been invited to go hang out with guests in France and Sweden. They were like, we get along well. If you're in the area, stop by.
Yeah. Right. It is weird because you spend like an hour, I'm only spending like an hour on the phone with my guests, but I always feel very bonded to them and them to me after we talk, right? Especially for them. A lot of times I feel like it takes a little while for them to cut the cord, right? Because after we speak, they're just so into it. A lot of times it's the first time they're really telling somebody some of this stuff. So they feel very close. And then afterwards, they just, there's a lot of emailing back and forth and continuing the conversation. And then eventually, they move on. But there is that kind of closeness that you get with somebody right after you are, because there's intimate conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a level of trust that has to kind of go into it. It's like, you got to make a complete stranger trust you to keep them anonymous and not judge and make fun of them. And
oh yeah, like, and I love YouTube. I started my YouTube channel only like maybe a year and a half ago. I didn't realize what a fun platform it is for a podcast because I like that people could comment, right? And I could see them and I could talk to people, so I get to really talk to my listeners. But a lot of times people will say rude things, and like I feel very protective of the people that call into my show. So I'll go after people that try to make fun of anyone that calls in my show or get judgy or whatever, because you're gonna have those people, of course.
Oh, of course. It's just like, I mean, even the most tame of subjects, you're going to find somebody. It's like, that's wrong, that's disgusting, you're horrible, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, yeah. But what about when the females cheat? Forget about it. The guys go fucking mental. It's kind of funny to watch, the certain things that I notice, Yeah,
the double standard it's just mind-boggling. It's like, women aren't supposed to do this, and that, and the guys are doing all of those things and more, and not realizing it's like, you're really a moron.
Yeah, not only that, they're all on my show complaining that their wives aren't women like that. But yet if they found a woman like that, they wouldn't know what the fuck to do. I have a girl named Christine. Her episode is probably downloaded like 300,000 times on YouTube. I mean, she was my most popular guest. There's something about gangbangs. Get a gangbang on your show if you want a lot of people to download it. It's a highly downloaded episode you'll have there. But I taped her actually, I think 4 times she came on my show. And the first episode was she emailed me. I found her, she emailed me and said, like, I just want to let you know I'm like a white woman who, got permission from my husband to have a gangbang with 5 black guys, right? That was the first show. And I mean, you wouldn't believe the comments she gets. I mean, guys go fucking off because things, she started seeing one of the guys and things with her husband weren't so great, but he said yes. And like, they go mental. Like here was a story where like the guy literally said you could go do it, but people still see her as a cheater and a whore, and oh my god, it's just like funny to see the episodes. But she actually called in 4 times, and the whole story played out, and you could really see what actually happened, and it was very real life, and I loved it because you didn't just get like one snapshot of a story, you got the whole thing. But still, people, they listen to the end, and they still only hold on to like one part, and that's what I try to do with my show is show people like more than just the headline, like this guy cheated on his wife, so therefore he's a fucking scumbag, right? Like, no, get the story and the real details, and maybe you'll be less judgmental, right? It's very rare that you get the whole story and you think someone's an asshole. Most of the time when you hear all the details, you feel a little bit differently because human beings are just messy and sloppy, and even if they do bad things, it doesn't mean that they're bad people,
Yeah, it's the problem is because society has sexualized the sexist, where guys, it's, hey, how many girls did you sleep with? Cool, the more you sleep with, the more manly you are, and us women, you must stay maiden.
Right, yeah. But that's changing. I think, I'm 52, but I do think that that's changing. The younger generation is a lot different, but that's how I grew up. And a lot of people who are calling into my show are around my age group. I get a lot of young people too, but, a lot of times I'm talking with people in my age range, and we grew up in a different time when things were like this, right? And we dealt with all this kind of stuff. So when you get a woman on, I just had a woman named Betty who did a gangbang with a lot of guys, and like, people love her, and her episode was highly downloaded, but she was like an older woman, like around our age, that did that. And that's like unheard of, right? For somebody from that generation, right? What balls? Because, you're a whore, right?
Yeah, it's like, growing up, young boys are supposed to be out, having all this sex to prove that they're a man, but the women, in order to prove they're a true woman, are supposed to stay pure until marriage. So who are the young men supposed to be having sex with?
Right. Exactly.
It's a very weird thought process that nobody really thought out.
Oh, yeah.
Especially not guys.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones who, at the end of the day, didn't fare well, right? I always tell my guy friends, like, you were born in the wrong generation. You would, back in our day, like, you had to date a girl to have her fuck you, right? Like, no girls, like, fuck guys unless they were, like, married to them or dating them in a serious monogamous relationship, I wasn't like that. I slept around, but other people, that's the way it was. Nowadays, that's not the way it goes down.
Yeah, it's now, I think it's because the younger generation is learning to be more open-minded.
Yeah.
And not be afraid of who you are.
I don't think they're learning it. I think they're born that way. I just think they're just a different, species. That they grew up at, they have different parents. They're growing up in a different world. They're seeing different things. We saw many. It's just a different time. Thank God.
Yeah, and also it's easier to access information now than it was like 30 years ago.
Oh, absolutely.
So
right.
It's okay. I'm learning more and more and more through this. What's this? What's this? What's this? Okay, this is interesting. And some people are paying attention to history and realizing just leaving stuff out is going to bite you in the ass in the future.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like I'm turning 40 next month, and like my generation was raised by the free love generation.
Mm-hmm.
So like you hear all these stories of people that were growing up in the 60s and 70s, and it's like they were experimenting with drugs, and they were experimenting with their bodies, and they were exploring each other, and they were just living their life the way that they thought that they would, freely. And then they raise kids, and they tell the kids, it's like, all of these things that I did growing up, they're bad now because I can't do them anymore. So neither should you.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy how I see some of my friends and some people in my family who I know what the fuck they did when they were younger, and now their kids are experiencing things and they're like shocked. And I'm like, why are you shocked? Like, you did the same thing. Like, people like really forget about who they were and what they did when they were kids, when they become parents. And I think, you do your child a disservice to not really sort of meet them at their level at certain times, and be a little bit more understanding.
I can understand, these experiences from my childhood turned out badly. So I'm going to try to steer you away from them.
Yeah.
It's a live and learn thing. You take my experiences and you learn from them and you become a better person. But the whole, like, you will not be who I was, like, who you were made who you are.
Of course. I think that's the hardest thing about being a parent, right? It's like, there is a fine line, right? You want to tell them if they're, it's like if your kid is driving down a road and you know that they're going to crash into a tree because you drove down that road and crashed into that tree. Like, how are you not going to tell them that their tree is there, right? And just let them crash. You just can't. It's hard not to, but there's a certain part of life that has to just be experienced, right? Like, no one's life is supposed to be perfect. That, to me, life is about growing and learning, and that happens through hard times. And I think sometimes it is hard to see somebody that you love suffer, but that's a part of life, and everybody's life has some of that. And those sometimes are a lot of times are like the best times in someone's life, because it does create massive change. But I think a lot of people are so afraid of that they try to not allow that for, their child. And I think like I said, I think that you do them a disservice. I don't have that problem. I think sometimes when my friend comes to me or someone comes to me and things are like really tough, I'm like happy for them, because I'm like, finally your life is going to fucking change. It's just like, I felt more sorry for them when they were just stuck in nonsense. It's like sometimes the lowest point is a beautiful time in someone's life. They'll get through it and they're going to be in a better place.
Oh, most definitely.
So 7 years is a long time to be in a college show.
Yeah, I love it though. I still have fun. I still will talk to somebody and it's like a whole the greatest thing about my show is it's not like a specific topic, right? It's whatever somebody's calling in about. I think you do the same thing, right? And that's what's fun about it. It's always a new experience. It's always a new person. I could talk to 20 cheaters or 20 guys that are into cuckolding or 20 bulls and they're all going to have a different story. So it's always refreshing and new for me. So I enjoy it.
Well, as long as you keep enjoying it, it never becomes work.
No, I like it. I mean, listen, I never made a dime off of it. I never tried to monetize it until recently. And now I'm finally making money, but I never tried before. So it's not like finally making money. I never did a thing. All I did was do my show and I put in a lot of time. I think, if you're going to do something for 7 years, of what people don't understand, or maybe they do, is that creating a podcast and doing it, you understand it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. It's not like, oh, you talk to someone and then put it in the computer and it magically appears. I mean, my show it takes hours, just for the episode. And now that I have all these other things that I do to make the money and monetize, it takes even more. And then responding to fans and YouTube and all this stuff. So it's a lot of work and a very little payback. It has to be something that you love. I started with a co-host when I first started, and it was great. I loved him. We were a very good pair. It was really fun to have a co-host. But literally like 6 months in, he was like, "When are we going to get famous? When are we going to make money? Like, how are we?" And I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me. Like, that's not how it works. Like, you might have to put in your dues. And if you're there for that reason, it's the wrong reason. Like they say, you got to enjoy the process. And I do this because I truly enjoy it. And now it's time to make the money. Like, it's ridiculous that I wasn't trying to monetize 3 years in, this took me a long time, but now I want to make the cash. But before that, I still am doing it because I like to do it. I enjoy doing it. To me, if I could get paid to talk to people, that's perfection. That's what I want.
Well, there you go. I mean, you found a way to, to at least a degree, do what you love to do.
Yeah, I've been lucky. I was raising a son. I'm a single mom. It was, I most of my free time was doing my podcast. I mean, I never missed a week. When I was taught to do my show very early on, it was like, oh, you pick a time in a day and you post an episode and you do that forever. And that's what I've done. And I've never missed a time, no matter what I went through. And it was easier once I stopped having a co-host, actually, because I just did everything myself, right? Which in one sense is harder, but in another sense it's easier because I'm just doing everything. I don't have to rely on somebody else and their fucking flakiness, Yeah. But it's fun.
Yeah, well, that's why I have 3 co-hosts.
Yeah, I suggest don't even have a co-host. You don't need a co-host. I'm telling you.
Well, I understand. Like, I have done a couple episodes where it's just me, but I find that the questions get better when there's an extra perspective because I have guy brain. So,
yeah.
I look at a lot of things from the guy brain point of view. I never quite reached the dude bro level. So I can't ever ask those questions, but I like being able to also get the information from the female perspective, the girl brain, because the girl brain works so much differently than the guy brain because
we go around in circles.
Right. Like I have a thing where I will say 6 words and expect that my entire point has gotten across because I've learned to consolidate my words. And I end up missing a lot of details because I've consolidated what I'm saying. My co-hosts have a tendency to go into more detail, so their questions get more detail in return, and I love that.
Right. So maybe you do need a co-host. When I had a co-host, let me tell you, everybody loved him and I thought he was a moron. And everybody was like insulting me and thinking he was so great. And I love that. I thought it was like really funny, but I still it was my show like from the beginning and he was just like tagging along and it was devastating, honestly, when I had to fire him. It was and I didn't know how it was going to survive without him because that's how I started it. and people loved him, and he did have an angle that I didn't have, right? He didn't dig so deep as much as I did. He was like the guy voice, and that was definitely needed because I like, I dig deep. I'm way more just the female brain, right? But I had to let go of it. And then once I got used to doing it on my own, I have to say I was like that, that it is what it is, and it is easier for me to do it now. But, it's great if you could do rolling hosts and it works for you.
Yeah, it's just sometimes the schedule doesn't work out. Like I said, my original co-host is off doing military things somewhere else, so she really can't be part of the show. And my wife happens to live with me, so as long as I can work around.
Are you guys in the lifestyle yourself?
Yeah. We're poly and have a little list of other things like.
Maybe you're going to have to come on. You could also come on my show as a poly couple and talk about it.
I would absolutely love to come on your show.
Okay, great. And you could advertise your show as well while you're on it. But, you're going to tell your story, right?
Yeah. So we'll have to.
That's what I think is different about me is like I don't have that background really. But maybe that's what works because I'm even more curious because I really don't have a clue of any of the kind of lifestyles that, that people are leading and so I'm more curious. So curious. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Well, it's like how my show started is I was in a Facebook Messenger chat group, and it was one of those ones where you share dirty memes and sexy pictures of things you find around the internet. And the subject of kinks came up, and somebody asked, like, I'm trying to learn about this. And it's like, well, I don't know about that, but maybe we can find out information. And it's like, well, we should, make the chat group kind of where we can come safely to learn about this stuff. And I had wanted to do a podcast for a few years at that point. So I was like, well, we could make a podcast and then all of us could be on the show talking about it and we can learn and help other people learn. They loved it. And then everybody but Courtney, my original co-host, backed out. So, I've been pretty steadily trying to get this show out for a little over a year now. And my schedule isn't as consistent as I'd like, but it's a little harder finding people willing to talk openly on my show. Maybe I should go to Craigslist.
That doesn't exist anymore. I don't know where but you could go. I mean, like there's places to go. I mean, for the first couple of years, I had to post ads constantly. Like I did a lot of work to get people to call in. There were weeks that I would be sweating it because I didn't have an episode yet taped. Eventually after my audience built to, where I was getting tons of people listening, I just had people emailing me, but that wasn't for a couple of years. The first couple of years, thank God there was Craigslist. Thank God by the time Craigslist got canceled, my show was up and running and I had people just emailing me. And now I had to stop taking, people's emails and taping people because I have too many. But in the beginning, it was for years, I had to work it and find people. So I started on Craigslist. I would post ads. I would reply to people's ads and I would do hundreds just to get 5 people. And then I would also, when worse came, like when all else failed on Craigslist, I would go to Adult Friend Finder. I had a post there and I would be instant messaging people. It was hard to find people there, but I'm sure there's places where you could advertise to get people. I don't know. How do you get people on your show?
Well, a lot of it is like I'm in a lot of kink positivity groups on Facebook.
Oh, that's a good place to get people too. Yeah, for
and,
sure.
Like I'll be scrolling through my feed and some of you like, hi, I'm, new to the group, so-and-so, I'm into this. Does anybody else know about it? And I'll be like, I don't know about that. Let me shoot a comment. It's like, hey, would you be willing to come on the show? And every once in a while I'll get a yes, but a lot of times like, well, I'm not really comfortable talking about it and being recorded.
Well, do you do the shout out on your show? Like for people that are listening, if you want to call in, send me an email. Like you should do that too, so that people that found your show and are listening to these stories, maybe it's because they have a story that they want to share, right? And then, so put that on. I don't know if you do it already, but like give an email for them to get in touch with you. because that's what I was doing as well, right? I was always giving the shout out on my show, and that's eventually, now that's how I get people, is just on my intro, and in my bio on iTunes as well. Like, just put an email, create an email for your show and put it everywhere so that people could also just email you.
Well, I've got an email, I've got a Twitter for the show. It's like, hey, you want to be on the show, you got comments, suggestions for future shows, go ahead and shoot us a thing. And I've gotten zero interaction on Twitter and not any emails other than, actually, you're the only person who emailed me back.
Oh my God. Well, you have to give it time, I mean, listen, I'm on my email all the time, right? Because I have so much action now, but I've been doing my show for 7 years, and I promise you, it took me years before I was, you've been doing your show, what, a year and a half? I mean, I wasn't getting a lot of stuff. I was doing all the work. The only reason why I was getting emails back from people is because, like I said, I was posting ads and I was responding I had the Craigslist app on my phone, and I was getting blocked so many times from posting ads, and I would post it all over the country, and I had a whole system going. I had to work it. It's hard in the beginning for sure to find people, but if you just continue to do it, the great thing about having a sex show, I think, is that sex sells, right? And so people are always Googling, so people will just find your show naturally because of the topics that you have. So, and that's what happened for me. Like, I had good numbers really early on, I think, just because of the topic, right? It was sex, and they find you just from Googling. But eventually it will grow, and then when you have enough people listening, they'll just be contacting you to be on your show. But it takes a while. It took a while for me.
Right. It's like I didn't jump on this show thinking, I'm going to send out one post and I'm going to have 1,000 people trying to contact me to talk about everything.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be, as famous as, I don't know. I don't even know who I would even compare it to. Dr. Ruth.
Oh, yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
So it was just,
but it's okay to have those aspirations. You want to get big, right? And you want to have a huge following.
I mean, I'd like to, because the show is the main point of the show is education. I'm real big in education. Right. It's not a matter of, I just think it's fun to talk about sex. No, I think it's important to talk about sex.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I agree. That's
like with the government trying to pull like sex education out of schools and trying to force abstinence only thing. It's going to cause problems because people are going to grow up thinking that that's the only way to do it, and like, why do I feel these other things? I don't understand it. Nobody will talk to me about it. It drives me nuts.
Well, like, why don't you give out your email right now? Because I feel like, I'll promote this episode on my episode and put it in some of my show notes, and then people will listen, and people, listening, maybe you're going to get a lot of people you want to hear me talk right from my show. So you're going to, like, maybe those people want to be on your show. So why don't you give out your email? What is the email that people email you to be on your show?
Well, the email is pretty simple. It's ludiversepodcast@gmail.com.
Perfect.
I figured I would keep it nice and simple. No.
Yeah, mine's strictly anonymous podcast@gmail.com. Same shit.
So, but yeah, I'll be adding your email and like a feed link to your show. Do you have a primary feed that you like people to go to, or just wherever they find it?
Yeah, wherever they find. I have this what is it, Linktree, which has everything, and then I'm a part of the Laugh Button Network. They have like a landing page that has, which I think is actually really good. I think maybe I'll give you that link because that one's really good because it's got, every podcast app, right? Like Spotify, all of them. So depending on what someone listens to where someone listens to their podcast, they could listen through there, right? I don't know. I think that's a good link. There's so many different ways for people to listen, right? People are listening on iTunes, they're listening on, Stitcher, if they're listening on a computer, they're listening on, I love YouTube. Have you put your show on YouTube? I love YouTube as a platform. I mean, I don't have any videos because I'm anonymous too, but I get a lot of hits on YouTube. I mean, I just started and I didn't even realize I was getting people listening to my show, but it's a whole other avenue and people that will find your show for sure. Do you do on YouTube too?
I do not do on YouTube. I didn't realize that you could do like an audio show on YouTube.
Yeah, it's really easy. And if you I mean, maybe you're going to cut all this out of your show. I think it's boring for regular people, but for you guys, I mean, if you podcast host, like I host on Megaphone now because that's where my network does, but I started out on Libsyn, and what's great about Libsyn is you just you just click off where you want them to generate your episodes, and it goes there, right? And YouTube is, you could click on YouTube and it sends your podcast right there. It's no, and it sends everything, like it's sending it to iTunes. It just sends it to YouTube, and it will just put whatever picture you have for your show, like whatever logo you use, it just puts it as the video. So you don't have to do anything except click that. And now, even though I'm on Megaphone, since they don't have that capacity to do that, I stay with Libsyn, and I pay them $20 a month just so that I could post to YouTube so easily, because it's great and it's easy and it goes straight up.
Interesting.
And you'll get thousands of people on YouTube, especially with sex. I mean, I just had Wesley the Bull. He's only been up for like a week and he's got 7,000 views, and that's just on YouTube.
Interesting. Well, definitely
you should try it.
I would definitely be looking into that.
Mm-hmm. It becomes easy. You just do like you're posting your episodes on, iTunes. You're just going to copy and paste everything, into Libsyn and press that, and it's just going to go straight there. It's not any more work than you're already doing, except a click of a button.
Yeah, I actually, my podcast is hosted through a site called Anchor.
Mm-hmm. Maybe they do it through there.
I don't know.
You should check.
I will definitely check on that. But they've, like, every podcast app thing that I've come across, and I found my show on there. Like, I'm even on Audible, and that blew my mind.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's how it works. It's very easy now. It wasn't like that in the beginning, but it's easy now, and you should really, like I said, look at it. It's for something like sex related, because people are always on there Googling it for it. Like, I didn't know advertising. I have like 7,000 subscribers. You want like millions, right? But I didn't even do anything to get them, like, really, so once you start doing it, you want to comment to people and stuff, and start getting engaged, but it's a lot of fun. So don't think you can't do it just because you have audio, because I find I have a very large audience there, and you might be able to do it very easy through Anchor. They might, I know Megaphone doesn't allow you to download to YouTube, but maybe Anchor does, because Libsyn does, and that's just another podcasting. Like I said, I don't know if this is so boring for your listeners. You could edit it out.
Well, you never know. There could be somebody out there.
Do you want to get back to sex? You talk a little bit sex? I don't know.
Yeah, well, somebody out there could be wanting to start a podcast and find this fascinating. Mm-hmm. You never know.
Yeah.
In 7 years, and you said over 400 episodes, I think.
Almost 400, yeah. I think about 389. Yeah.
Oh, right. I imagine I didn't scroll through all of them, as I found out. But I imagine you've heard some pretty wild stories.
Yeah. What
would you say would be probably the one that took you the most by surprise, the one that caught you like off guard?
That's a good question, but I would have to like break it down. Like, there's been a couple things that took me by surprise because I didn't realize that this was a thing that a lot of people were into. And then I've had a couple things that were a surprise because they were like the craziest fucking thing I'd ever heard, Which one do you want? Or which ones do you want? Or both? I don't know.
Either one works.
Yeah, like, I think it was very interesting for me to find out that so many guys were into watching their girl get fucked by another guy. Okay, that was something. I always had a lot of girlfriends, but I always had a lot of guy friends, and guys were very open, anonymous. Very open to me about what they did, right, in their sex life. I never had any of my guy friends tell me, like, yeah, I'd love to see my girl get fucked by another guy. And actually, all of them, when I started to do my show, and I would say, like, oh, my God, I had this episode where this guy said that he saw their girl fucking another guy, and it was such a turn on. They would be like, I would never want that to happen. But, I've talked to so many guys, and I have to say, when I post those episodes, anything to do with cuckolding, guys watching their girl fucking another guy. I mean, people go mental. There are so many guys that are into that, and I just had no idea. It was very surprising to me. I think I always knew that a lot of guys cheat behind their back. I wasn't surprised by how many guys are giving blowjobs behind their wives' back, but I was surprised with how many guys actually enjoyed that. And it was even more surprising when I talked to the guys who didn't even realize that it was something that they liked. It kind of happened, and then they realized it was like, whoa, that fucking turns me on, right? And so that was something that I learned, right? That was that was more popular, and that it was something that guys like to do. And I didn't have one guy that told me that they were into it, but a lot of guys are.
Okay. Yeah, I can see the appeal.
I had a guy, I had a guy that literally was like, and I knew what was coming, but I teased it in the episode, but he was like a pantyhose guy. He was very into wearing pantyhose, but he made breakfast, and it had this whole jizz thing attached to it. Now I not even remember what happened, but I think it was that he cracked some eggs this is what it was. He was like into cock cages and pantyhose and torture and all this stuff, and he was into plastic panties, and he put on these plastic panties in these tights, and he shoved these raw eggs down into his crotch, and he jerked off somehow because he liked the way that it felt in there, right? And then I swear this is a real episode that existed. This is a real guy did this, and he then took it out and he scrambled it and cooked it up for breakfast and ate it. And he asked me afterwards, he's like, would you like to see a picture? I was like, no, absolutely not. I do not need to see a picture. But it was a real, true story. I mean, this was not made up. It was the craziest thing I had ever heard.
Wow. Oh,
yeah, crazy, right?
Wow. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. Isn't that fucking gross? I mean, you could kind of think about the whole egg yolk thing kind of being like calm, and like how we thought that, like, you know, I don't like, but then to do it and then to come because you're jerking off, like, you know, you're so horny from that, and then you come in the eggs and then you fry them up into an omelet and eat it. Holy shit. That was like the craziest thing I had ever heard. That was recent too. I mean, like, I think within the past year and a half, maybe, I had that guy call in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, see, that's that level of openness that I was mentioning that you draw out of people. Like, a lot of people really wouldn't be able to get that kind of a conversation out of somebody.
Right. But I promise you, I don't judge him. Like, I mean, and I don't act like different. Like, I mean, I was like, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard. I can't believe it. I don't want to see your picture. It's gross. Like, I'm very honest and real. You know, it's not like I act one way and then behind their back I'm different. But I don't judge him either. It's just I don't really take people, like what people do sexually, that serious. Like, I don't think it's a big fucking deal. And so I'm the least judgmental people I know, and anybody and all my friends would tell you the same thing. And I think that people could smell that from a mile away. And that's what I really like. I think I said it before. That's why I think people tell me stuff, and I just ask, you know.
As much of like a bad word as it's becoming anymore, it's good to provide that safe space for people.
Yeah, that's what I told you. I mean, I always feel like I can't tell you how many times I get emails after I get off the phone with somebody and they express to me how happy they are to have been on my show and how much it helped them, because it's the first time that they ever talked about the fact that they were wearing pantyhose, or talked about the fact that they were cheating on their wives and they feel bad about it, or talked about the fact that, you know, they fuck guys behind their husband's back, whatever it is, you know. And as well as how many times I get emails from people who are listening to my show that say, thank you so much. I always felt like a weirdo and now I don't, like, you know, and that's truly why I do my show. I really do like helping people, and I do help people. I always feel like listen, of course I'm going to sensationalize my titles, right? That draws people in. But really, if you listen to my show is not like a dirty sex show, right? I'm not a porn star, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not my angle. My angle is like, I really do like to help people, and that's what I am doing, you know. And that's why I think it's great that you're doing it too. It's great that people get to know what people are really doing. People do shit like this, like, big deal. I mean, not every guy's like, you know, crushing eggs in their panties and cooking them and eating it, right? But a lot of people are wearing pantyhose. A lot of people are having threesomes. A lot of couples are poly, right? I mean, this shit is going down.
Yeah, the thing is also it's good to try to educate, because, you know, if you're interested in kink and you don't know how to go about it or what's a part of it, you're going to go blind and get overwhelmed.
Yes, for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, listen to the people who have done it successfully, right? You want to hear from the people that have done it successfully. I love those episodes. You do definitely that definitely is another way that we're helping people, for sure. Yeah, is to educate them.
Like the last one with the whole safety in certain kinks, how important safety is, because people can in certain kinks, you might go a little too far and not have safety or anything, or didn't put any, boundaries down, or you forgot and somebody ends up dead or severely injured. So.
Yeah, not good. Yeah, and because my thing is like, I'm not specifically like, oh, I'm educating people, but I think by accident I am, right? Like, I love a swingers gone wrong story because I think people learn through that too, like what not to do. I have a lot of people who have done it the right way, right? But I think sometimes it's important to hear of like how things could go horribly wrong too.
Yeah.
Yeah, if all you hear
Right.
is the positive stories, you're going to think, I'm going to get into this, it's going to work out great.
Yeah, right. And a lot of times it doesn't. But it was always interesting to me too. And I don't know about your relationship. I'm gonna have to dig deep on when you guys are on my show. But like that, a lot of times, what I find with the open relationships and the swingers and the couples who have been doing it for a really long time and the ones who are very successful, it's always I always find that the men in that relationship is what I always say the opposite of the type of guy that you would think is successful at it. It's not the player or the guy that wants to fuck a million people. It's like most of the time by nature, a monogamous good guy, right? That's doing these kind of things. And that's when it works the best. That's what I found. A lot of times the couples, like I said, and the guys who are calling, I mean, they're great guys. They really love their women. They have total respect for women, right? And I think that helps to make it successful.
So, of all the people that have called in, do you think that any number of them have called in with a made-up story just to be on the show?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I change, I get a lot of feedback. So I'm not a lot of feedback, a lot of pushback actually sometimes, because sometimes I'll call people out, sometimes I won't, and I just go with however the fuck I feel sometimes, and there's no rhyme or reason. If I could analyze every one and say, why did I do it here and I didn't do it there, maybe I could give a specific reason, but sometimes it's just what I feel like at that moment, There's been a couple where it was so obvious. I had one guy that, it was funny. I had a guy call in who told me that he like fucked his aunt or something, or his wife had fucked her aunt, or there was some sort of incest thing going down, right? And I can't tell you how popular that shit is, right? But to me, he called in a second time and he doubled down, and it was kind of obvious he was maybe lying. And then I had a lot of people writing to me wanting to talk about their incest stories, right? And every fucking one of them was made up. And there was one kid who really, and I'm like Judge Judy, I'm sorry, like I really ask a lot of questions. So it's hard to lie to me because you got to give me details. Like I will catch you. My brain is like a computer chip. If you said something 20 minutes ago that doesn't match, I'm going to be like, what the fuck, right? And this guy was trying to say that he fucked his aunt, and I really busted him cold turkey, like with text and stuff over. And it was like actually like really interesting. And I'm like, I'm going to air this because it's a great episode because, I actually caught him in the midst. And, but yeah, so yeah, I have some people that call in. I had a guy early on. He was like one of the people that I found on Craigslist very early on. He was really popular. I think he's the one who made my show successful because he would get thousands of downloads in the first like 6 months I was doing my show, because this guy would call in. His name was John, quote unquote, and his wife fucked other people. And after I talked to him many, many times, it started to become obvious that maybe these were tall tales, right? And he always called me from this hotel. Years later, after he stopped, I got a call from the hotel, asked me like, did I know him? Because someone found this number on his phone records. I don't know what the fuck was going on with him, but he started to obviously lie, or it was always a lie, and it became, but I said like, and I eventually called him out on it, but for me, I found it kind of interesting that he was lying. And I was like, I'm not going to stop this because it's actually just as interesting to me that this is a person that would make this up, right? So that's how interested in shit I am. I could get interested in lint on the floor. I'm just even interested in the liar, the lying mind that wants to think about this. So, I went with it. And I eventually called him out, and there was a lot of discussions about it. And sometimes I think it's okay because it does get a conversation going. My most recent one I aired, which is Barry. He's a voyeur who's introduced me to something called dogging, which is like watching people have sex in cars. And a lot of people are calling him out on whether he's full of shit. And sometimes I don't like to chime in or really give my opinion because I think it's interesting for people to talk back and forth. But yes, it happens. But it's not the majority. I promise you. It's the minority. It's probably like 10% of the people calling in are bullshit, but 90% are real.
Well, I mean, even the lie calls could have some shit because there could be somebody who is on the fence.
Totally.
It's like, I'm actually doing this, but I don't know if I can call in and not be judged or whatever. And then they hear this person who, even though they're lying, is talking about it and not being judged until they get called out on the lie. And then they could be like, well, okay, now I can call and tell my story.
Yeah, I think a lot of times it's somebody that lives in fantasy. There's something about them that, and I think on some level they believe it because the ones that are really good, I mean, I've had a couple that are really good. One that stands out in particular, he was a recent one. He got, I think he's up to maybe 100,000 downloads on YouTube. I forget, but his, He had a wife and her best friend were like gang banging up on this hill, and his story was so fucking good. But he like went a little bit off the rails towards the end. He had parts of his story that were just so unbelievable. You're like, okay, then maybe this is all untrue, but it's hard to decipher what's true and what's not true because he had so many details and it was so specific that you're like, maybe some of it is true and maybe he takes it, sort of in other places and that's what's not true. So who knows? I don't know the mind of a fucking liar because I'm like very honest, right? But I find it fascinating. But I let people who've been on my show, like, Barry, who just on, I'm like, a lot of people on YouTube are calling bullshit to your episode. So go on there and talk back, stand up for yourself, do what you got to do. Right. And, but he was also another one with a lot of details. And then I had a girl on recently who slept with Ashley. I mean, she was fascinating. She slept with her best friend's mom and stepdad after they stopped being friends. Like she was like best friend, and I called her out on bullshit and she was fucking true. I made her send me proof and we did a whole second thing and I aired her proof on my Patreon page and it was all true. And I thought she was lying. I don't know why. So, who knows? These things happen when you're talking to as many people as I talk to, but a lot of times I still air those episodes.
So has there been anything that you've heard about that you kind of wanted somebody to call in about but hasn't?
Yes, like shitting, someone that likes people to shit on them. And I've come so close to getting that kind of person on my show. And, at this point, I mean, I literally, on my podcast recently, I've been saying, like, I'm not taping anyone except you're female or you have, like, the most crazy story that I've never heard before because I've just had so many people on and I have so many episodes taped already. I just can't air them up and I'm too backed up, right? So that's what I'm waiting for, like that kind of stuff, stuff that that I haven't heard from. That's why when Barry, the voyeur that said he had, saw these people like fucking in cars and joined in with them, I was like, oh, that's a good one. I'm going to tape that, even though I'm not taping now because I've never heard of that. I had a guy and he canceled on me, so I'm hoping he comes back on, but he was like, I'm a priest and or a reverend or something, and I'm bisexual and sleep with people, something like that. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna jump on that because I know that story probably exists out there, right? But I've just never heard of it. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm looking for, stuff that I haven't heard before, or more of the stuff that I know is like super popular that people really want to hear about. Like I have to tell you, get a black bull on your podcast if you want to get a lot of fucking downloads because I had Wesley on and I mean it's probably was one of my most successful episodes and I don't know why I haven't had a black bull on in all this time because now I don't go looking for people, right? They email me, but he emailed me and that's how I got him on and let me tell you it was hugely popular. People were dying to hear from that person, right? I've had the opposite. I've had the white couples who are seeking that, the cuckold couples who let their wives fuck and, black guys and gangbang Christine. But I had never heard from the bull himself. And that was like a hugely successful show. And that's what I love. I love to talk to somebody that has a new thing to talk about that I haven't heard. So whatever it is, I don't have, like I said, I do have like the shitting thing on my list, but I have a guy coming on that's into adult diapers and wearing diapers. I have that taped. So I'm looking for stuff right now that I've just never had on my show before. So they're a little bit more outrageous. So I don't know if that's a good angle, but I'm trying that now.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the one who, the guy who's a priest, because I'm a former youth group leader.
Uh-huh.
And an ordained minister. So.
Uh-huh. Oh, there you go. Would your I can't wait to have you on my show. Would your congregation have any idea?
Well, I mean, we have the contact information. We'll set something up.
Yeah. But do they know?
Actually, well, the youth group thing was quite a few years ago, and the ordained minister thing is actually online.
Right.
So
it's not like you went to seminary and you're like the real deal. You have like a congregation or anything.
Right.
Right. Yeah, this is, see, there you go. People, this is what people do. This is what ordained ministers do. They're polyamorous. You just would never know, right?
I mean, polyamory is all through the Bible anyway. So.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. If somebody is considering being on your show, but not quite there, you know, they got that one bit of hesitation.
Please.
What would you like to say to whoever that person is?
No, I won't. I have to tell you, I've learned something a long time ago, and people don't understand this, and people are always trying to force me to have people on the show that they want to get on the show. It doesn't work that way, not for me. There have been numerous times where I've talked somebody into being on the show, or people have sent me, oh, why don't you reach out to this person? Or they reached out and said, I got this person to agree to be on your show. And it's like, I feel like a monkey doing a dance for them. It's very hard for me to get a good interview from them. I have to do a lot more work to get them to talk. And it's never an enjoyable experience. So I don't do that. I tell people all the time, people will always email me like, oh, why don't you reach out to this person? I'm like, I don't reach out to people. I want to meet people when they are ready to talk to me. And so, and that's why I get the great conversations. I don't want to talk to somebody that I have to explain my show and talk them into doing it. And sometimes, like I said, people put me in touch with these people, and then I'm explaining my show, and then they're asking me a million questions, and then I don't email them back because I don't want to deal. I don't need to. First of all, and second of all, I'm not going to have a good fucking episode with that person. I want somebody that's dying to be on my show, and those are the people that I have on. I mean, in the beginning, when I, started with the people posting and I posted the ads, it was never good conversations with people that I had to really talk into it. It was always the people that were like, yeah, that's fucking great. You're going to get better interviews with people who really want to be on the show. So for me, I don't talk anybody into doing it. I don't want to force somebody to talk. I had a guy on who emailed me, and he had his wife. He's like, I'm going to have my wife come on and talk about it. And it's like one of the most painful interviews I did. And so every now and then I'll go against my rule and do it. And it's always a reminder for why I don't do it, because it never winds up to be a good conversation.
Okay. I mean, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Because if you're not fully comfortable talking about it, then you're going to leave out a lot of details, and you're going to fumble over yourself. And
yeah, no, I want people who can't wait to talk about it, who are emailing me, and I think that you get better. For me, that's better. Guess I find any other way, and like I said, I've done it, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work for me, so I don't go looking for people.
I can imagine your show being anonymous definitely helps. Like, I've had a couple of people who are like, I'd like to be on your show, but I'm a teacher, and if my school finds out about this, then I could lose my job. Or
so you make them anonymous, right?
Yeah, so it's like, you can be on, you can change your name, it's not a problem. I recently learned how to change voice pitches, so I can do that.
Every single person's voice has changed. I used to ask people in the beginning, but then a lot of people would say no, and then one of my friends actually got busted. Like, somebody knew it was him, like out of nowhere. They were listening to my show. So it's a small world, right? So now I don't even ask. Everyone's voice gets changed across the board, and everybody's name gets changed. And because who cares? What does your name and where you're from matter? I don't know these people either. People try to send me pictures all the time. Now I'm doing anonymous pictures on my Patreon to drive traffic there, and I do that, but I don't look at anyone's face. People used to send me pictures all the time, and I would never scroll down and open because I don't want to know. There's something about people remaining anonymous, even to me, that helps me be the least judgmental. So I don't need to know anything about. I prefer not to. I don't know your people's real names. I don't know where they're from. I don't know what they look like, and nor do I care. I want like just the story.
That would definitely help ease anything, because I mean, it's one thing to be like, you know, you'll be completely anonymous to my audience, but the whole you're anonymous to me too.
Yeah,
kind of ease that tension a bit.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm always like. I don't know why more therapists don't do it. It's kind of like therapy, because I think it's really hard to walk into a therapist's office and you're looking at them, right? And they're looking at you, and you're telling them that, you know, you like to dress up in your wife's panties and put makeup on, you know, and if you've never told anyone, that's like scary. But it's not scary to get on the phone with me. I'm very easy to talk to, and I make people very comfortable because I just start talking to anybody. Like I know them 10 years, you know, that's just my personality. I'll talk to anybody. So I put people at ease in the first couple of minutes, and it's fine. It's comfortable. And like I said, I don't pry. I don't want to know where people are. Call me from a number I don't know. Block your call. I don't give a shit. I'm not looking at, I don't want to know that kind of information because I don't think it matters. You know, your name is the least interesting thing about you. You didn't even choose it. Your parents did. Who the fuck cares? I never remember somebody's name, but I remember everything about somebody's story. You know, that's the stuff that I'm interested in. I think that's like the meat, right? I'm only interested in the meat. That other stuff doesn't matter. So I remove all of that from my show. And the niche that I created by accident, it just all really works, right? And I didn't out myself because I didn't want anyone to know because I thought I was going to suck. But now I'm not even out. And I think that works in a weird way that people are dying to know who I am, but nobody does. So it just happened by accident, but it works.
Yeah, I can see the appeal there. Like I, right from the get-go, was just like, hey, this is who I am. If you don't like it, too bad.
Yeah.
But that's me. I've always been I'm a very open book. There are certain things that I won't talk about around certain people, but there's really nothing about me that I'm not willing to talk about.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I understand that's not how everybody is, which is why, you know, I've got guests that have been on the show that they go by Plum or Luna or just some anonymous name that they've come up with that helps them be a little more comfortable, so it's not like, oh, I saw that your name was on this, so now I'm going to listen to it.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that helps. You should do that all the time to people if they need it. You know what I mean? You should always offer that up, so it'll help you get guests.
Yeah, it's like my mom knows I do this show, so I just don't care anymore.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, well, my friends know and people do, you know, but nobody else really. And I've been doing it like for a really long time. My nanny once found out, and she was like telling all the other nannies, like one of my mom friends were like, oh, your nanny said you were doing like a dirty sex show or something. I was like, oh my God, this is why I don't like people to know, because people aren't going to listen, right? And you're just going to look through the topics and you're going to get a definite idea of what you think my show is about. But if you listen, it's going to be a totally different experience. So I really don't let people know, and I don't bother telling people unless they're really close to me. But it's a big part of my life because it's like it takes up a lot of my time at this point. It's almost like a full-time job.
Oh, yeah. Like you said before, people don't realize how much work goes into it. It's like I can record for an hour, and then that's guaranteed at least 2 hours of editing time because you got to cut out the silences. And I have a really bad habit of, you know.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, it takes 2 hours to edit. Then you have to write the promo, and then you have to upload it. And there's a lot of work, and that's just one episode. And then when you start to become more successful, you're talking to people that are emailing, and then you're scheduling. You know, I mean, now I have a scheduling thing that I use, but you know, for years I used to go back and forth with emails, like what time, what's time zone are you in, and what time are you going to call me? You know, it's a lot of work, and so you gotta, like I said, love what you're doing, because eventually, when it catches on, it becomes even more work, but it's fun. If you love what you're doing, you'll have to come on my show.
Okay. Do you have any more questions, Danny?
No.
I think we've pretty much covered everything. I mean, we went way in depth on a lot of things.
I know. I hope it's okay that we talked about podcasting and stuff like that. I don't know what your angle was when you wanted to talk to me, but you know, even if you don't air, like, I don't know, you know, I hope that it was beneficial for you and your show. I really hope that you're successful. I think it's important what I'm doing as well as you, because you're doing kind of the same thing. And I think that that's great. And, you know, if I'll promote this episode on my episode, you'll get some people that are listening to my show will go listen to this, right? And so make sure to give out your email a million times. So, because I'm not taping people right now. So maybe people that want to be on and talk about their story, they'll talk to you. You're going to give them anonymous place just like I would give them, right? And so I hope that, you know, I helped you and you use some of the things that I said to do, you know, but you could cut that stuff out of the episode if you want. But I do like helping people. So, I mean, for me, it's like you're starting your show and you've been doing it for a year, but like I like to help people. So that's my thing.
Well, I'm always willing to take advice, especially from people who have been doing it for a while.
Well, I just think the help is like you go on a show or, you know, you want to send listeners, right? And you hope to promote it. You know, I think the promotion is really what helps everybody, right?
Oh, yeah. But I will be adding links to your things in my show notes.
Great.
And until we can get around to scheduling us to step onto your show.
Yeah.
It's been wonderful talking to you.
Yeah, thanks, you guys. I'll send you a scheduling thing if you want. You could you could sign up to call in for sure. I'll have the poly couple, the priest poly couple. I don't know. I don't want to make up the title now, but I'm already thinking. All right, but thanks so much for having me on your show.
Well, and thank you for coming on. If you all enjoyed listening to this episode, feel free to leave a review and ratings wherever you happen to be listening to it. It helps draw people to the show. You can throw money at us like our Patreon supporter, Zachary Hale. You know, tell your friends, tell your mom. I told my mom, why the hell not? You can get a hold of us on Twitter. All the links will be in the show notes. And comments, questions, suggestions for future shows, we're happy to hear them. But until next time, keep communicating, keep each other safe, and remember to have fun.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you for listening to Ludiverse. If you have any questions or comments, contact us on Twitter or Facebook. Just search for the Ludiverse. Remember to rate and review wherever you listen. If you want to help support the show, please consider donating to our Patreon.